Yes, and people say, well, you got experience. Yeah. Keep telling yourself that. I just spent $1,000 for 120 seconds. That's not experience. Experience is grabbing humans and trying to take them down and submit them. And if you want to peck around at it and take 12 years, go ahead. But there are people who can get that work done in 2, and you do it by crunching time. So our concept is we definitely need the academy and training twice a week, go to class, right? But guess what? If you can create these training camp opportunities, now you can crunch time. And you say, well, now what if I can do 2 or 3 of those a year? And we have kids that come to all 10, right? But most of our customers and athletes in the wrestling space, they come to 3 to 5 of those every year, because we offer them August through May. And right now we're just doing jiu-jitsu camps, let's say every 3 months, because we're still building. We actually got one going with Lovato Association. Raphael and Kabir are going to come in April 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Is the time slot we have now. So that's going to be more high level. And we're going to bring the wrestling component and answer questions. And maybe obviously a lot of gym owners, they should think about adding wrestling to their gym, because, I mean, you got to pay the bills, right? And plus it's good for your jiu-jitsu athletes to learn wrestling just from a practice standpoint. But there are a lot of wrestlers who, if you brought them into your gym and had sort of a structured wrestling environment, because a lot of youth and high school wrestling, I got to tell you, it's just not organized. There's a lot of opportunity out there, but there's not really a lot of bang for your buck, and your buck being time. So, and then you pull those kids into jiu-jitsu. So we're going to Miami next weekend with Leon Barocas. I think that's how you say his name. This is the second time to go visit him. He's an awesome man. And we're going to try to cruise down and visit Ben Stark also. But they have wrestling and jiu-jitsu, and their athletes, they kind of require them to do jiu-jitsu and wrestling. So that's kind of what we're bringing to the table with the camp that's at my gym with Raphael and Kabir. And obviously answer some wrestling questions for the high-level jiu-jitsu athlete who's still competing, right? So I know a lot of jiu-jitsu athletes who are competing. They try to get in the mats with some college guys and stuff, and they can learn. So this could be a great way for them to kind of pick my brain. And I'm my son's in jiu-jitsu. I'm by no means a jiu-jitsu expert, but I'm starting to love the sport, and I watch it and I follow it. My son's involved in learning, and we got a camp with Raphael, and our plan is to do some weekend camps with some high-level guys from around the nation, and bring them in sort of as an expert seminar type of a high-level guy. And our plan is to do 2 to 3 of those a year, where we're bringing in someone like that, and it's more engineered towards the brown belt and black belt or the gym owner. And then, 3 to 4 times a year do a youth, and 3 to 4 times a year do an adult class that is, a lot more competition based and core skills drilling based. So that's the plan. Okay, so I think who becomes elite, there's we have something called the foundation, right? So there's 4 parts to our foundation. One is is your mental game, right? And that's what we're kind of talking about a lot in this podcast. Number two is your positioning. And you got to hold position, right? Because it's like a boxer. You know, we don't want to box like Rocky. Now, that might be exciting for the fans, but that's crappy boxing. You don't want to compete in jiu-jitsu that way or wrestling. And, you know, in wrestling, another thing is our hand fighting, right? And, I mean, we hand fight in jiu-jitsu too, right? Not so much on our feet. Probably the non-wrestlers don't. They probably should. But certainly whenever you're competing, you know, let's say half guard or side control, you're hand fighting, right? So in wrestling, we're really big onto hand fighting. And the last thing we focus on, the fourth pillar, we call it, is technique. And so we like to look at our technique. Well, as far as becoming elite, you want to become a tremendous technician. However, we know what the 80-20 rule is. Well, in wrestling, so what I do, everything in my mind is based on pictures because, you know, I can't remember numbers. I have terrible reading comprehension, but I kind of got like a photographic memory. I think in pictures, you know, and so everything I do is sort of kind of conceptualized around that. And so I say 95-5. So 95% of my points come from 5% of the wrestling, divided up among the very common positions. So I say, okay, let's say, you know, you guys have half guard. We might have, I'm on top with a cross wrist. Okay, so I'm going to get about 2 of those a match times 50 matches in high school varsity wrestling, so 100 times a year. I could probably show you 13 things to do from there, but let's just work the best 2 or 3. What's going to work against Iowa State? Okay, so now we've taken 10 things and we've said we're not going to drill that crap. Let's just drill what's going to work at the high level. Okay, so now we break those down step by step and say, guess what? We're going to drill this, you know, hundreds of times a year round. And then we say, that really works good. Either I am a genius or maybe I just lucked into something. Either way, the common positions philosophy is really working here. What other position is very common in the wrestling match? Well, and I counted all this stuff because it's my job because, you know, I've been coaching as a job for, you know, since 1999. I actually have 26 locations. I only coach 1 night a week now. So I've got a staff that does this and they kind of, they run my system and so forth. But so at ear-to-ear collar tie, they're going to grab your head in the middle school and high school level, you know, 5 to 10 times, 5 to 9 times is what I counted. So we always say like 7 or 8 times. Let's say 7 times a match, someone grabs your head with a collar tie, right? Your elbow's on the collarbone and you grab the back of your neck. So that's called a collar tie. So if that's going to happen 350 times this year during a varsity match, that's a common position. So we have 5 things to do from there. 1 is forehead to forehead, or 2 forehead to forehead, 2 ear to ear, and 1 is just a way to clear out. So write that down. So as far as becoming elite, when you look at becoming a very technical athlete in the sport of jiu-jitsu or wrestling or anything, and we talk about fundamentals, we're looking at the best 2 to 3 ways to score from the very, very, very common positions. So now your guys and girls and men and women right now should be taking a piece of paper and just writing everything down. Okay, so, you know, I'm sure there's a couple of best ways to pass guard. Write it down. Now let's become literally top 10% in America at that. Let's quit drilling this other, I learned a foot sweep. A judo professor came in and taught us a foot sweep. No, you're not top 10 in America yet or top 10% in America yet. You can do a foot sweep later. You can't pass guard. You suck there. You got to get back to it. You know, I can't turn from a cross wrist. I can't clear an ear-to-ear collar tie. We're not going to work on foot sweeps and inside trips and outside trips in wrestling either. Oh, I really want to. Go somewhere else. You're not. We're gonna. Hey, let's start winning. How about that? Does that sound like fun? Okay, then listen to me and quit arguing and let's get really good at these common positions. So you look at these common positions, and now what I've done on our online wrestling course, right, is I've further compartmentalized those down and broke them down from basics, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So there's 4 levels to learning wrestling. And because there are positions that are common to like beginner wrestling, let's talk about 6 and 7-year-old kids who are beginners. And then there's common positions that you might see at the college level or the nationally ranked high school kids who are hardcore. They're hitting the camp circuit. They're getting in front of guys like me and some other high-level camp guys. And there's a few of us out there. And we're all friends and we all share the same customers and athletes. But so but for the most part, when you start looking at that middle foundation or ground, the common positions are the same whether you're 6 years old or 26. So that's what I look as being fundamental. Okay, so fundamentals should be the best 2 to 3 ways to score from the very common positions. And once you've mastered that, now you say, okay, what are the counters to the counters? So when I'm trying to pass guard, what's the best way that someone will counter this? Okay, what's a counter to that? Let's just go that far. Now, obviously, if you're you or some high level, brown belt or black belt, you probably can go way down that rabbit hole, but we don't need to do that yet. Same way in wrestling. So if I have a front headlock, I'm going to get about 4 front headlocks a match. So when I'm trying to score on you in a front headlock, I've got 3 ways to score from there that we just hammer the crap out of. But then we start getting into our advanced academy where we have, like we just had 27 of our athletes go into college wrestling the past 16 months, 17 months, and 18 of them are Division I, and 17 of them came from this one room. It's called our World Class Wrestler Program. It's kind of a cheesy name, but apparently it's working. So what we do in there is we start getting deeper into the positions. What's the counter to the counter? What's the 2 best ways my opponent's going to try to get out of a front headlock? What's the 1 best way to counter each of those? So that's kind of how far we go. So there's kind of a second layer of fundamentals there, you could say. And so your listeners should be focusing on that. And so now, as far as becoming an elite athlete, from the technique standpoint, that's what they have. And literally, there might be like 3 pages of technique. And it sounds daunting, but you just write down, like for us, I'll write down front headlock. Well, there's 3 things. Ear to ear collar tie, there's 5 things. Cross wrist tilt, there's 3 there. So when you start breaking it up like into like little compartments, there's not that much to know. There's only a couple of techniques from these very common positions. And I always say this, if I only got a chance to shoot 1 free throw every 5 games, I wouldn't waste my precious practice time drilling a free throw. But it happens all game long. So every team that wants to be any good becomes masters from the free throw line. Same with double plays and in baseball, corner kicks in soccer. And I'm sure jiu-jitsu, you guys kind of have the common positions as well. I'm certainly a layman, so excuse me if some of the terms I'm using don't sound like I've been in jiu-jitsu my whole life, because I haven't. But the common positions philosophy does create a technique system that you can drill. And remember this, and then I'll shut up because I know I get long-winded. But a system that tells you what to do by default tells you what not to do. So if I have a weightlifting plan and I'm 62 years old, okay, there's my weightlifting plan. What if I have a weightlifting plan but I'm a college volleyball player? Okay, she has her plan. What if I'm a high school football player and I'm an offensive lineman? I have a different plan. Okay, now me and the volleyball young lady, we're going to have some of the same lifts, all right? But a 62-year-old will not. How about a youth kid? Well, you know what? An 11-year-old probably isn't going to be deadlifting. Okay, so now that you have this plan, it's called a workout plan. You walk into Gold's Gym and it's like 3 levels, it's 200,000 square feet. You're not going to touch a lot of that equipment because by default, the plan that you have in your hands is telling you what not to do. You're only doing what is on that piece of paper. And that's what your athletes should do when they're looking at developing the fundamental skills of their sport. And then there might be a second layer, like we talked about, the counters to counters and so forth. Anyway, so whether you're a beginner in jiu-jitsu or you're elite or you want to become elite, we're all drilling the same plan. And then obviously, if you want to become elite, there's other things: diet, nutrition, flexibility, your mental game, your positioning. You got to be calm and patient. Some people freak out. They have an emotional reaction when something bad happens, or the official or referee makes a bad call. So there's a lot of other topics there for pieces of the puzzle to become elite in any sport. But from a sheer fundamental technical standpoint, I think that's all you need is the best 2 to 3 ways to score from the common positions. 20,000 years. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Uh-huh.